Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Wherever you are in the world, it doesn't matter. The important thing, I think it's a good time to have a little bit of a discussion on small business and small business owners, what's going on, what's happening in the world, where it's relevant for you, the small business owner. What I want to do is I want to start having this almost as on a weekly basis where we're really covering the news, but not the boring irrelevant news that doesn't really matter. Like, we're not going to start talking about stock prices and things like that, stuff that doesn't really concern us as small business owners. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going around the world and kind of picking up on a theme every week and seeing what the latest trends are, what's happening in this industry, and how that is relevant and how that is important for you. Now, the way that this is going to go is that we're going to have the show in two parts. The first part is I'm going to be discussing a couple of topics. And by the way, if you don't know who I am, hello, my name is Tamer Shahin. I am so happy to have you here. I can see already in the chat, we're having a little bit of an international kind of gathering, and I am so happy that you're here. Please, if you haven't put down already, put down in the chat where you're from in the world, and I'm going to be looking forward to interacting with you in the second half. So as I was saying, the first half, we're going to be covering some important topics and relevant topics. And we are going to then start giving some feedback and seeing how that can apply to you. The second half is I'm going to start answering some of your questions. Now, the way that we will cover it as time goes, and hopefully as the kind of the show grows, I'm going to start prioritizing member questions from our communities like Groundbreaker and Firestarter. And then we're going to look at potential super chats. So if you want to make sure that you are prioritizing your question, that you have a relevant question for me, you put it down in a super chat below, and I'll make sure that I will prioritize them and I will cover them as long as it's deemed appropriate, obviously, for the show and it's relevant. And then if we have time at the end, we will be covering some questions from the live chat. I can see already Denmark, Bulgaria, Belgium, and a whole bunch of places, Mexico as well. So, and Malaysia. Hey, Malaysia, how are you doing? So, all right, so let's start off today. And by the way, before I do start off, because this is the first time, I want to make sure that we begin to sort of hopefully not just build a community, but build news and build a show that is actually relevant to you. So what we'll be doing today, we've picked some topics, but in the future, what I'll want to do is I'm going to start asking for nominations for topics, certain things that you think that if you have any particular questions, or if you have any particular news items that's relevant to you, or even directly that's happened to you, we're going to give you a way to be able to actually submit those nominations, and we can cover them hopefully in the show. Right, let's start off with topic number one, and that is an update from the CEO of YouTube. And what happened recently is the CEO from YouTube, Neil Mohan, he basically wrote a letter out, and he actually identified some sort of main priorities. And in there, he basically covered a couple of things, and the main thing that happened was that it's really interesting because if you actually scroll through the document, a lot of it talks about how now YouTube is becoming the new TV and a whole bunch of things, but then hidden in there are a couple of really interesting things for us. One of them, or both of them, are really related to the AI. And with AI, there's a couple of things. YouTube is saying that they're going to be using AI a lot. They're going to be providing a lot more AI tools. But at the same time, they're using AI to crack down on AI, ironically speaking. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be starting to look at a lot of content that's gone out on YouTube that is fake AI videos and content that doesn't really add value. And we will see this in today's show in terms of quite a theme in terms of quality and consistency and vanity and metrics and sanity, and you'll begin to notice the theme. But in this particular document and this letter that he wrote, he was basically saying that the algorithm is going to change, and it's going to no longer be focused on consistency. It's going to no longer be focused on the quantity. It's going to be basically the quality that you provide and how you actually portray that to your audience. Now, one thing that I found was really interesting, and I want to sort of capitalize and cover that as well, is on this show that I will be picking out some posts and some things that other creators in this space have actually done, and I'm going to sort of highlight them. And I think that this is relevant to the topic that we've had here. And this is a creator that is actually Sunny. You might have heard her before, actually. So she published a video on YouTube where she actually talked about social media is no longer the important thing that people used to talk about, because everyone used to say that you need to be on social media, you need to be omnipresent everywhere. And the video that she has is actually quite an interesting video, because she talks about how she stopped publishing on YouTube a lot, and actually it helped her business grow. And this is something that we've also seen quite a lot in terms of our channel as well. So if you look at our channel, we haven't been publishing a lot. That's going to change, because there is a balance, and the balance is really important. So when we stopped publishing on a consistent basis, actually our views grew, and the subscription and the channel grew, and as a result of that, our sales grew even more, because we were attracting the right type of people. And that's the important thing here, is that you're actually really focusing on what the quality is, who the demographic is, and making sure that they're happy and they're satisfied. You're not supposed to be feeding the algorithm anymore. You're supposed to be feeding your audience. And that's what's really actually important, is that you're feeding the audience, and the audience feeds the algorithm in return. If they are happy and they keep watching, then basically having that becomes a really, really important part of where you are. Now, in the comments below, I'd like you to sort of give me your opinions in terms of whether you've seen this happen or not. Have you actually published more or less? Has consistency been really useful for you? Whatever you think, put down in the comments, because we would really like to understand what's going on in this space as well. But on the flip side of that, actually our channel as well stopped growing and actually slowed down its growth when we started being quite a distance away. So I think last year we published about only 2 or 3 videos, and the year before that was about 5 or 6 videos. Now, when we were publishing about 5 or 6 videos a year, and hopefully we're planning to publish a lot more. I know a lot of you have been asking for it. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. We had a video that went into 1 million views plus, and we've had several videos that go into several 100,000 views. But actually, when we started going and actually not publishing a lot and going down to about 6 months gap where there was no video that was released, that's when we began to realize that YouTube's channel slowed down quite drastically. And that is finding the balance, because at the end of the day, you need to reach your audience, you need to communicate with your audience, you need to be able to tell them what you want, and you need to focus on what's really important, and then making sure that you understand your demographic, understanding your audience. And like I said, don't feed the algorithm, feed the audience, let them feed the algorithm back for you. Hopefully that makes sense. So as I was mentioning, please put down in the comments where you stand on this, because have you been using AI? Have you been publishing content using AI? Now, AI is not a something that we should be afraid of, but it's understanding how we use it in the right way. And you'll begin to see actually in the next topic that we're going to talk about, it's actually quite important. Now, this was a survey that was published by PwC. And PwC asked and surveyed globally, and they do this on a regular basis, on an annual basis, and they asked a lot of CEOs what their view was in the world kind of thing space. And this was really important, because 2 things came out of this survey from the CEOs and business owners. One of them was confidence is actually really, really low this year. They are not expecting revenues to be very high, and everyone seems to be scared in the marketplace, acting from a place of uncertainty. And that has in return slowed sales down. It has increased the sales cycles. And this is something that's also, we're seeing this, and a lot of other businesses that we're working with as well, in terms of our clients in the Firestarter program, in Groundbreaker. All of these, we're beginning to see that the sales cycle is lengthening. And actually people are being more uncertain and more hesitant to buy. And on the flip side, the second thing that came out of this survey was that actually most CEOs and most business owners have actually seen no perceivable benefits financially from the use of AI. And this is really important, because does this mean that AI is actually not a good thing? Because we all know that AI is the next big thing. But what I want to remind you is a couple of things. I don't know if you're as old as I am in terms of when the .com era sort of started. Everyone and their uncle and their dog had a .com website and a business that started out. And everyone was sitting there and saying, this is the new gold rush. And they sat there and people were investing silly money into .com businesses. And then at the end of the day, the bubble burst, because they began to realize that people were just doing it without any strategy, without any plan, and without actually supplying the demand that was there. People were creating things for the sake of creating the technology, but actually not stopping and thinking, hey, does actually anyone want to use this? And when that dust all settled, obviously, as you can see today, .coms and the internet actually did revolutionize the way that we do things, and it did change a lot of lives. But what's happened in return is that that kind of hype that happened at the beginning seems to be what's happening right now with AI. And when you begin to look at that in terms of things like, I'm trying to pick up something here where we are going to, this is the curve that I wanted to show you. Right, so where we seem to be right now is on the tip of that sort of curve right there, where everyone seems to be hyped up and everyone has inflated expectations of where AI is going to be and what it's going to do for them and what it's going to do for everything. Then there's always this kind of like the bubble gets burst, and then there's this thing called the trough of disillusionment. This is a Gartner curve, by the way. It was published and developed by Gartner a while back. And this tends to happen with a lot of innovations. And why I think this is relevant for us as small business owners is that we need to understand that we just don't want to dive face forward. And when we begin to see that the market in AI, and there's a little bit of a backlash, which is what's happening already with the YouTube CEO. But this is the clever thing, that the YouTube CEO hasn't sat there and said AI is bad. He's actually turned out and said, we're going to be using a lot of AI to fight AI and to fight all the content that's in AI. And that's the way that we should be looking at it from that perspective for our businesses and for us. Because we are going to begin to see a backlash. We're going to begin to see people sitting there and saying, AI is rubbish, it's over, people are just using it for really low quality stuff and it's not adding any value. And what we want to be able to do as business owners is not have an AI strategy, but have a business strategy that potentially can use your AI as tools to be able to drive your profit. Because that's what it is at the end of the day, to be able to bring value, have impact, bring profit into your business. And as long as you're driving it and it's integrated as a part of your strategy, that's where it becomes really, really super important. So from an AI perspective, like I said, with the PwC survey, it was very, very important to be able to actually begin to see that people are beginning to have that backlash. And because we've got a lack of confidence in the marketplace, people are beginning to worry and people are beginning to slow down. Now, when I've had clients have asked us internally in our programs where they've said, hey, what do we do in this time of uncertainty? People are just not buying. I actually beg to differ slightly on that. People haven't stopped buying. It's not a case that they don't want to buy. It's a case that they're buying comfort and they are avoiding uncertainty and avoiding risk. And what we as business owners is that we need to start making sure that we begin to actually remove that uncertainty from them, give them certainty that what you're selling them is actually going to give them what they want, and you're removing the risk aspect from them. And this is really important to begin to understand, because people will have now started shifting their priorities in what they want to actually buy based on what kind of minimizing the risk and giving them certainty so that they can see themselves through this time of uncertainty, ironically speaking. So what we want to be able to do is when we start looking at our marketing campaigns, when we start looking at our plans, our strategy, we are trying to make sure that our conversation is driven towards removing risk, removing uncertainty, and being able to make sure to do that. And that is really, really important to be able to get to that thing. So have you had a chance to have a look at this PwC survey? If you haven't, there's mainly two things that have come out of that. What do you think about that? Because I want to begin to understand where you are in this space. Where is your head at in terms of uncertainty in the marketplace? Have you found that this is actually also the case in your business, in your industry, that things have slowed down? What strategies and what tactics have you started using to be able to counteract that? And has that been able to work for you? And at the same time, where are you in the space of your AI strategy? Because a lot of people have been calling it an AI strategy, but I want you to start thinking about your business strategy and how you're integrating AI into that to serve your purpose, to serve the destination that you're heading. Whatever it is that you think, please make sure that you jump down both in the chat and in the comments and let us know your thoughts there. Right. So let's move on to the next topic. And let's have a little bit of fun, but it's actually quite relevant. So you may or may not have heard that there is a tiny little movie coming out at the end of this year called Avengers Doomsday. Now, from a marketing campaign, one of the things that has happened is actually quite impressive, because when they first came out with their marketing campaign and as they were rolling it out, a lot of the content creators that cover this type of news actually came through and said, this is the worst marketing campaign ever. What are they doing? They started off by having a whole bunch of chairs with sort of director chairs with different names way back when the stream took 5 hours, and people that were trying to cover it got very, very frustrated, but people still remember it and people are still talking about it until today. Then the next set of marketing campaign happened, and what they did was essentially, without going into too much detail, is that they started releasing small teaser trailers. They're not calling them teaser trailers, they're almost like post-credit scenes, if you will, but they're attaching them, and they attach them exclusively in front of Avatar, Fire and Ash in cinemas, not online. So this was the first time that you had to go and watch and buy a movie to go watch not even a trailer, a teaser trailer. It's happened a while back, but this is the first time that they did it in this particular way, where they didn't release it online in this day and age, and then they only had it there for a period of 1 week only, and then they would release a new one. And they did this for 4 weeks in a row. And then people said, these trailers are going to leak. They leaked straight away, immediately. And then they said, well, now no one's going to watch these trailers, and no one's going to actually get there, and no one's interested in this, and this is the worst way to go about doing this. There is a reason, and I'm going to make it really relevant to you in a second, but bear with me in a second. So what happened? It actually worked out even better. So when they didn't end up releasing these teaser trailers actually officially after they were in the theaters and in the cinemas, they ended up having one of the highest views on teaser trailers in history, achieving more than 1.02 billion views. This comes to us, this news is from The Hollywood Reporter. Now, this means that they generated a massive amount, and they dominated the conversation, they dominated the news cycle, they dominated quite a lot of things. And this is where I find this incredibly interesting, because they went against the grain. They innovated in the marketing way that they do the marketing. They started having these countdown clocks, which we use in our industry, in our space, and where we start talking about scarcity and providing countdown clocks. But also they said, hey, you can only see this in the cinema. You can only see it for 1 week. You can't see it beyond that. You can't actually access it online. There is a leak somewhere that you might be able to download, and probably they were instrumental in either releasing the leaks themselves or knowing full well that they were going to be released, and they didn't really care because they knew that that would generate the conversation. Now, does that mean that we want your videos to go viral in your business? No, it doesn't. Does that mean that we want you to start going, and releasing your ads in the cinema? No, it doesn't. So how does that actually apply for you? The idea here is you need to dominate the conversation about your products and services for your prospects. You need to be in that conversation on a week-to-week and a day-to-day basis. And you need to be sitting there and making sure, how do I make sure that I'm top of mind for my prospects, for my potential clients? Because this is what actually then generates the excitement. By all means, start looking at scarcity, start looking at urgency, start thinking about how you can potentially go against the grain where everybody was saying what they were doing from a marketing perspective was actually really, really dumb and really it will never work. People didn't understand, and you should be able to start thinking about innovative ways to market so that you can stand out in the crowd, so that you can start creating that conversation, creating that awareness, creating that scarcity, creating that urgency, and then people will then become a lot more interested. And then if you back that up with certainty and you start removing the risk like we were talking before, that's when you start being able to hopefully dominate in this space at this time, and hopefully that makes sense. So that's this topic down, and I wanted to ask you as well, what do you think? What do you think? Are you actually even remotely interested in Avengers Doomsday? I'm a big movie buff, by the way, so I'm interested in all this stuff, but I always like to see what's happening in other spaces and how that could potentially relate to us as a business. And by the way, if you're enjoying this, please make sure that you let me know. Put some likes or whatever, or say yes in the chat so that I know that this is stuff that is actually very valuable for you. Otherwise, I'll just stop talking. But yeah. So what do you think? Make sure that you actually let us know in the comments below. Have you tried any particular marketing campaigns that have generated conversation in your space? What were they? Let us know again in the comments below and in the chat below. Let us know so that we can begin to see how we as a community can begin to share, and we can drive that sort of conversation in our own spaces, in our own industry, and what's working for you. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I would look forward to seeing you there. Okay, right. So with all of that actually now brings us to the end of this portion of the show, which is the covered topics. What I want to do in the future is I want you to please start nominating potential topics in the future, and we will start making sure that we push them and try and also make them relevant to you as a small business owner, and we can start seeing what the trends are. If you think of a particular post, a social media post, or a YouTube post, or any other thing by a particular creator as well that you think is actually really useful, please point them our direction so that we'll have them in the description below, and in our community tabs and posts we'll be able to start sending them out in terms of finding out how you can nominate, but also just put it in the comments and say nomination. Right, and then the topic of choice, and we will see if we can cover it in the weeks to come. Right, so now is the time where I want to start going through some questions and taking it from there. So let me see if I can put down some of the comments and see where we are with the comments. Right, so let me see, because I've been missing them out. Right. If you've got any questions, by the way, it would be nice for you to be talking about, if you put Q and then the question, so that I can actually see within the chat as well, that it's an actual question as well. Right, so let's have a look in terms of some of the comments here. I want to be able to see some of these comments. So we'll be able to have a look. I think one of them is talking about managing business and family. Right, let's see. So, great question. And I would love to have advice, because no one has fully cracked it. One of the things that I really enjoyed, not enjoyed, but one of the things that I truly believe in is not using the work-life balance phrase. Because I always feel that when you talk about work-life balance, it kind of indicates a little bit that you need to almost have this balance of 50-50, right? So you almost need to say like, you're doing too much of this and you're not doing too much of this. But what we want to be able to do is the word that I prefer is harmony, and making sure that there is harmony in what you do. Because there will be times and there will be months where you are up against a deadline at work and you need to sort of take time and you are working slightly more hours and you are making sure that you're pushing ahead to be able to build a business. But then there are also other times where you need to completely switch off and be able to be fully there for family and business. And making sure that you understand what harmony is for you is really important, because everyone has a different threshold and everyone has a different preference. From my perspective, and I've spoken about this in one of my previous videos where I spoke about chronic pain, that is something that affects me and impacts me as well. So it's not just about family, but it's also about being able to sustain and pace myself to be able to actually work properly and be able to be productive when I do get into the work environment, if that makes sense. But it's really important to make sure that at the end of the day, we understand why we're doing this, right? Because we get into business not because we want to have a business where we work 24/7. Nobody does that. People get into business because they have ambitions and dreams. There is that why, right? And what does success look like for you? And being able to actually understand what it is that you want to achieve and what's important for you. One of the things that we talk about, I think, on the 4-hour video that we have here on YouTube and as well in our Groundbreaker, one of the first questions we ask right at the beginning is not just what does success look like for you, but we almost ask people to write an obituary. Like, so if you were dying tomorrow, or if you died today, what would you do and what would you say and what does that actually say? And that's actually really useful, because it gets people to start thinking about what's important for them. And then once you begin to understand what's important for you and for us as business owners, then we can begin to say, okay, how does harmony look in that space and how do I make sure that I build a business that can do that? And it's never going to work if you start doing it only by yourself. You need to make sure that you've got the right system to support you. And I'm talking about business systems, but I'm also talking about people systems, right? So you need to make sure that you've got all of that in place so that it's there to support you, right? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an answer and sort of a little bit. One of the things that I did want to talk about and cover, by the way, that I didn't get to talk about is making sure that we wrap up and sort of, again, it's relevant to this in terms of what does success look like for you and what do you want to do. One of the things that I did actually want to talk about was the whole theme of what we've spoken about today is this whole vanity versus sanity, right? Because what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to do social media for the sake of social media? Or are we trying to have revenue and actually no profit? I was talking to somebody a while back and they were sitting there and saying to me, I was asking them, how much revenue are you making at the moment? And it was around about $1.2 million a month, not a year, a month, $1.2 million. And I was like, okay, great. Well, what's the profit? Negative. Sorry? Let me zoom in a little bit. Negative. $1.2 million a month, profit negative. I've got loans. I can't afford to pay my mortgage because all of the money that's going in is going out and then some. And I want that to sink in for a second, because it's what are we doing this for? Are we doing this just to have these vanity metrics? I've posted 5 social media posts every hour, or I'm making $1.2 million a month in revenue, but then what's left over? Are you spending time with your family? Are you actually making profit? Are you actually pocketing that money and being able to take it and utilize it in the way that you want? And this is what I want you to do. Would you rather be making 1.2? I want in the chat, in the chat, please. Would you rather be making $1.2 million a month and pocketing nothing, or would you be rather making, let's keep it simple. Would you rather be making $50,000 a month and pocketing, let's say, $20,000 a month from that, right? Look, put it in the chat. I'd like to see which one would you, or are you after the vanity metrics? So I want to see 1.2 M in the chat, or I want to see 20K in the chat, because I want to understand where we stand. Now, does that mean that we sit there and we say we're going to downsize and we're going to scale down and we're only going to go for 20K? No, that doesn't necessarily mean that, because you want to be able to grow and you want to be able to scale and you want to be able to achieve. Goes back to, what does success look like for you? But then we need to ensure that we're focusing on the right metrics and we're measuring the right things. Right? We need to be making sure that we're measuring the right things and we're focusing on the right way of being able to do that, whether that's spending time with family, whether that's also looking at profit and not just revenue, and a whole bunch of things. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question. Right. So let's have a look at the next question. How do you plan to combat resistance to change during digital transformation? Great question. So there is always resistance to change. Always. There's always resistance to change. People don't like to change. We as business owners are really rule breakers, if you will, because we are sitting there and saying, hey, the status quo doesn't work. I'm going to do this thing that's going to be innovative, and I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to get other people to go and buy it and follow, right? That's kind of what we do as business owners, because we see something that's not quite right and we want to fix it. We want to have a solution to a potential problem. Most people, on the other hand, don't do that. Most people are very resistant to change because they like to stay within their comfort zones. And whenever you'll see new innovation, whenever you'll see different things that are happening, people will try and resist change. And the way to go about that, there's a whole entire, this could be multiple videos, there's a whole entire kind of like area of knowledge called change management. And the way that typically happens is making sure that you are explaining the why a lot and finding champions to be able to actually, not just you sitting there by yourself trying to push things yourself. Because if you are sitting there and saying, we're going to do this is what we're going to do because this is the way, then everyone's going to sit there and say, well, why? We were fine already as it was. Why do I need to sit there and actually make this change where everything was working by itself? So what I would posit on the other side then is, okay, let's not do that. Let's actually find a way to justify how it will benefit people and why we're doing what we're doing. It's always about the why. Start with why, like Simon Sinek talks about. It's always about the why. Try and make sure that you're telling people why this is beneficial for them. Give them the vision of what you're doing. That's why vision becomes really important. But it's not this boring vision statement that you're going to copy and paste on your website. It's actually, what is your true vision? Why? Why is this important? What is the mission behind this? How is this going to come in and make a real amazing difference? And once you've found then one or two champions, then let them do the talking for you. And then you slowly start putting things in a way that you roll them out, where initially you're incentivizing people and saying, hey, look, if you can do this thing and you make this change, there's going to be incentives for you. There's going to be ways where you win and we all win because as a result of that. And you do that in a way where that then starts making sure that people say, what's in it for me? Okay, now I'm going to do it. I mean, and we don't need to be cynical about this. The win-win can be done in the way that, you know, we want it to be done, hopefully, if that makes sense. Once you're past that point and you've gone through that tipping point, if you will, and people have adopted, and then you're finding very, very small amount of minority of numbers of people that are not then following, that's when incentivization turns into a different matter, which becomes a little bit more in terms of like penalizing people, if you will. But that becomes way, way later. Hopefully that makes sense. What's the next one? What is the market like nowadays for launching a health product? Like it was like it was this year, like it was last year, like it was 100 years ago, like it was 1,000 years ago. People have to live and people need to be healthy. And one of the areas that will never change is people need to be healthy, because that's looking after number one, if that makes sense. It's really, really important. So now, does that mean that every health product is going to make a ton of money? No, that doesn't mean that, because there are also health products on the market that people, again, don't want. And it goes back to that whole thing that we were talking about in terms of what is it that people want, and making sure that you serve the people, that people are doing what you're serving, and actually solving a real problem. And that's really what's important here. So what's the market like nowadays for launching a health product? Very, very good. But make sure that you're finding the right thing that, again, talks. It's not so much a vitamin or a vitamin if you're in the US. It's not so much a vitamin that you're trying to sell. It's a painkiller. Okay, so it's something that really gets to a pain point that people find is so necessary that they need to buy. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense, right? And does that mean, and I've spoken about this in other videos before, does that mean that we can't sell vitamins or vitamins? No, it doesn't. But when you start looking at marketing campaigns for vitamins and vitamins, people will sit there and they'll say, okay, you need to get like B12 complex so that you can actually have an amazing pregnancy, so that your babies will be healthy, right? Or you need to do this so that it can be that. If you need to build muscle, then you need to do this and this and this, and you need to take this, otherwise you're not going to be able to do it. And it becomes so important for people. This will, this will not make your health, memory, you'll lose memory if you don't take this, vitamin, or you don't do this. So what you're trying to do as well is trying to understand that you are finding a product that is a painkiller, and or at least you can make sure that you are marketing it in a way so that it can be a painkiller. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. What's next? Let's have a look. I've got my team here kind of messaging me privately some of the messages, so that, because there's been quite a lot on there. I'm going to get better at this, and I'm going to be able to sit there and actually put these out. I will be able to put things out like this, where it says thank you, you're welcome very much, and I will be putting out the sort of the messages out there and putting out the questions in the future. But for right now, please forgive me. I am trying to sort of like get through with this system and things like that. So until then, we'll be able to do that in the right way. Right. So a question here. Please, can you tell us how we can test a product idea? Right. So there are multiple ways to do that. And this is why a lot of times bigger companies that do have budgets will have focus groups, and they will actually arrange places where people will go and actually try this product and sit down, and they'll sit down and say, hey, what's your feedback on this? Now, you might not have the budget to arrange something as elaborate, but that doesn't stop you from going out and asking people, right? It doesn't allow you to go out and say, hey, what do you think of this? And making sure that you're actually getting that constant feedback over and over again. I will point you to our video on the 4-hour video. I think there is a section in there that talks a little bit about testing your product idea, making sure that it's going to actually have traction, in terms of making sure that that's the thing. We'll put it down in the description below, the link in the description below once this video is done, or my team will paste the link in the chat for you, where they'll put down a link to the 4-hour video. But as a very, very short answer to a very, very long question, solution, just ask people. You can ask people whether it's online, and even before you actually develop the product, you can still ask people whether they think it's a good idea or not, right? And then you sit there and test it and then give people sort of, and that's why building something which is a minimum viable product, don't sit there and try and perfect something, and then you build it and then they don't come, which is not what you want. You want to make sure that you are building something that people really want, and testing it along the way and iterating and making sure that works over time. I think that's the way to go about it. Right. What's next? What is your inspiration to keep going even when it is hard with your business? Great question. Great question. So it's the why. Always comes back to the why. And I risk sounding like a little bit of a broken record here today. It's the why. Understanding why you did this in the first place and what it is that you're trying to achieve and the mission that you're trying to achieve and the impact that you're potentially going to have. And that impact can be to your clients or to your families and loved ones or to yourself or to whichever. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you're going to have a massive social impact. Some businesses don't. A lot of businesses do. The ones that I like to work on and the ones that I like to sort of be part of are the ones that do have that impact. For example, CEO Entrepreneur. We want to inspire and empower each and every entrepreneur to build the business they want so that they can get the lifestyle they need. And that is a mission of ours because I tried to get that advice when I was trying to run my businesses in the past and I couldn't find it. And I realized that the education system is a complete shambles, right? It's built back in the Industrial Revolution so that it can dish out factory workers, not business owners. And it doesn't teach us how to be business owners. I'm not going to go into detail on that because I can rant on about that forever. But suffice to say, that gives you an idea where it's something that really riles me up because I begin to see why are we not being taught how to run businesses? Why are we being taught how to follow? Why are we not being taught how to lead and take risk and do all of these things? And then I begin to think about all of the business owners and the impact that could have by us helping them along the way. That then keeps up top of mind. In addition to that, yeah, I'll be able to provide for my family, for my loved ones. I'll be able to do all of these things. And you kind of make a note of this stuff and you have this on a vision board and you have this on a few things where you begin to say, this is what I need to keep looking at to motivate me through times when business is hard. Because business is hard. Don't get me wrong. There will never be an easy business. And if anyone sits there and says to you, hey, this business was easy, they are lying. Or they struck lucky and they won't be able to sustain it for a while, for any longer. And that's the truth of the matter. And that's what we want to make sure that you're always going back to your why. Okay, hopefully that answers that question. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well is if you are finding any of this useful, I'm going to try and build hopefully a community here. So we will be here on a weekly basis. So mark it in your calendar, same time every week, unless there's obviously something wrong and we'll let you know in advance. But I'm going to try and make that commitment so that we can be live here every week where we'll be covering the latest, hopefully, in terms of the industry and how that's relevant to you and taking your questions over time. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is if you do want to be able to get even more support, because there's only a small amount of time here, if you do want to be able to get even more support, please have a look at our programs and services. If you are under $100,000 in annual revenue, our Groundbreaker community is awesome. Again, I'll get my team to put down a link in terms of you being able to join that community, as well as it will have coursework and workshop and sort of like, worksheets and templates and guidance and office hours and all of that stuff. But if you're over 100,000 and you're stuck and you want to understand how you can scale your business, then the Firestarter program is the best way to be able to do it. There's a QR code up here somewhere, and that will enable you to go and book a call with somebody on my team. I'm not going to put it on for too long because I don't want it to turn this into a big, huge marketing push. But, hopefully a little bit of a shameless plug. I hope you don't mind. But yes, so if you do want to speak to my team, again, my team will put down the links in the description below as they are. Okay, so any last questions, or that will do it for today? I think that will do it for today, and hopefully I hope you enjoyed this format. If you've got any advice or tips on how we can improve this format, please let me know and let us know, and we will try and improve this as time comes. Hopefully it's not bad for the first time, and then hopefully we'll kind of keep improving as things go along. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks very much.